Hey friends, Matt aka Martin here. I'm an electronic musician, educator, and Ableton certified trainer, and in this video I want to take you through the basics of getting started with making your own music and sounds using Ableton Live. Specifically in this video, we're going to be going through how to use Ableton Live 11, but if you're in a different version of Ableton Live, such as Ableton Live 10, like a previous version, or maybe you're watching this in the future and there's a future version, hopefully all of these things that I'm going to show you will be applicable to that version as well. There might just be a few slight tweaks here and there, but the workflow should remain basically the same. First of all, to get started, you'll need to download and install a version of Ableton Live, which you can do directly from the Ableton website. Now, Ableton Live comes in 4 different editions. There's the Lite version, the Intro version, the Standard version, and the Suite version. Ableton Live Lite is the edition of Ableton Live that generally comes with hardware music making gear like audio interfaces or MIDI controllers, or with certain applications or software or programs, subscription services, things like that. And it's a more limited version of Ableton Live, but still entirely functional. You can't buy a license for Ableton Live Lite outside of getting it through one of these hardware or software deals. However, the other 3 editions, Ableton Live Intro, Standard, and Suite, you can purchase directly from Ableton.com. These editions come with varying limitations, with Intro, of course, being the most limited and Suite being the most featureful, but they're all perfectly valid and usable for music and sound making. Probably the biggest difference is not so much in the actual functionality of the software, although Ableton Live Lite and Intro are both limited to a certain number of tracks, but more so in the inclusions in terms of audio effects, instruments, and sound libraries, which can help you to create a wide range of music in different styles and genres. Now, if you haven't purchased a hardware or software product that comes with Ableton Live Lite and you don't have the money to shell out for Ableton Live Intro, Standard, or Suite, you can download a time-limited trial of Ableton Live Suite directly from the Ableton website, which is really fantastic just for getting to learn the software and figuring out if it's something that you want to invest in and start making music with. In order to download the trial, all you need to do is come to the Ableton website. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Go up to the top right and click on Try Live for free. From here, you can download the installer for Ableton Live for whatever operating system you're on, and then you'll have to go through the process of creating an account, signing up, which is totally free, and then just authorizing your trial version of Ableton Live by following the prompts on screen. In this video, I'm going to keep it super simple and straightforward to follow, so regardless of what edition of Ableton Live you're using, whether it's Lite, Intro, Standard, or Suite, you'll be able to follow along with exactly what I'm doing, so you shouldn't feel too limited by whatever edition or version of Ableton Live you're using. With that said, let's get right into the software, into the program, and get started making some music and sounds. So when you first open up the program, this is somewhat what it's going to look like. You can see there's a few main sections. There's this section over on the left, which is called the browser, which is where we can access all of the sounds, instruments, audio effects, and other things that we can use inside of an Ableton Live project or session. Here in this middle, we have a switchable view between what's called the session view, which is this kind of vertical layout. And if I press the tab key, I can switch to another view called the arrangement view, where all of these tracks that we saw in our session view are now instead laid out horizontally instead of vertically. Down the bottom here, we also have a switchable view where it says drop an instrument or sample here, and we'll get to this later on. This is called the device view, and if I press the shift and tab key, I can switch this to the clip view, which is something that we'll look at in a little bit. Let's press the shift and tab key to switch back. And then the last little view that I want to bring your attention to is right over the bottom left, called the info view. If you don't see this little info view square in the bottom left, you can simply show or hide it by holding down shift and pressing the question mark key on your keyboard, and that'll show or hide this info view. And what this info view does is provide you with information about anything that your mouse cursor is hovering over inside of Ableton Live. This could be things to do with keyboard shortcuts, what that particular parameter or setting does, and it's a really great way to help learn how to navigate and use the software. Now, the next thing I just want to draw your attention to really briefly is the preferences window inside of Ableton Live. And this is where we can go to set up how we want the software to work, look, and run, as well as in order to make sure that we can actually hear sound coming out of our computer. In order to access the preferences, I'm on a Mac computer, so I'm just going to go up to the top, open up my menu drop-down bar, come to where it says Live, click on this, and open up Preferences. If you're on a Windows computer, this option is going to be under the Options menu instead. Just look for the Preferences option. Now that we've opened up our Preferences window, let's take a look at it here in the center of the screen. And we can see there's a whole bunch of options with a bunch of tabs on the left. We're not going to go through all of these, but the two that we are going to go through are this look feel up the top to start with, which allows us to just change the look and feel of the program. Now, by default, Ableton Live is this kind of light gray color. If you don't like that and want to change it, it's really easy if we just come down to the display customization area, click here where it says theme and select a theme from the drop-down list. I'm going to actually change mine to mid-dark. Now, again, there might be different themes if you're in different versions of Ableton Live, but you should be able to change the theme to suit your liking. If you want to zoom in the display, make it brighter, change the color intensity or grid line intensity, you can also do that kind of stuff here as well. But for the moment, we're just going to leave the theme set to mid-dark. Now, the next thing we need to do is set up audio to be able to come out of our computer. And we're going to do this in the Audio tab. In the Audio tab, if you're on a Mac computer, we just want to set our driver type here to Core Audio, which should be done by default. And if you're on a Windows computer, you might want to set this to something like ASIO or DirectX or something along those lines. For the moment, don't worry too much about which is the better one. Just select one to make sure that you're getting sound coming out of your computer. Next, we need to make sure that we've set up our audio output to come out of where we want it to. And this is done with the audio output device setting. Currently, mine is set to DAW sound, which is just what I'm using to capture the sound from my computer. But in your instance, you might want to select something like built-in speakers, or if you're using an audio interface, this is where you'll select that audio interface from. You can just simply click on the drop-down menu and select whatever audio output device you want. And if you're recording anything with a microphone, you can also select the audio input device from this area as well. And the number of input and output devices will totally depend on your independent and unique setup. Once you've set up your audio output, you can go ahead and close the preferences window by clicking on the X button. And now we're ready to get started making some sounds and music. So to get started, I'm going to press the Tab key to switch back to the session view, which is this vertical view right here. And this is one of the more unique features to Ableton Live. A lot of DAWs, digital audio workstations, are now kind of utilizing similar views to this, but in my opinion, I think Ableton Live still does it the best. And what's really cool about Session View is that it allows us to play with music, loops, and sounds in a non-linear fashion by combining bits and pieces together to kind of create compositions or perform music on the fly. We're going to do a tiny little bit of that today, but first off, we need to get some sound into our session, and we're going to do that by coming over to the browser section. Now, we're going to start by making a basic drum pattern. And to do this, I'm going to go to my categories on the left and go to the drums category. And here in this drums category, we'll be able to see all of the different drum kits that we have pre-installed in our version of Ableton Live. Depending on the version of Ableton Live you've got, the edition you've got, you'll have a number of different kits. You'll probably have a lot less than I do here. But all we need to do to find out what one of these kits sounds like is simply just click on one of these options. So I might go up here and click on, say, this altered kit, or maybe this one, or maybe this one. And when I find one that I like, all I need to do is click and drag it onto one of the MIDI tracks in our session view. So I'm actually going to come down and I'm going to find a 909 kit, which is going to be under Kit. Scroll up a little bit to Kit 909 Classic. And I'm just going to click and drag this onto this first vertical section here in our session view, which says 1 MIDI. And when I click and drop that on there, that's going to insert that drum kit onto that MIDI track. And a MIDI track is simply a track that allows us to play some sort of instrument. In this case, we're playing a drum kit. You can see that when I've done this, it's loaded up the device here that is our drum kit in the bottom device view. And here we can see a bunch of pads on the left, and I can click on these little play buttons to audition those sounds. There's also a whole bunch more parameters and stuff that we can play around with in here. But before we get to that, let's actually create a really simple drum pattern to play this kit with. To do this, I'm going to go back to the session view and double click in this top little rectangle right underneath where our track header is. Double click here, and this will create what's known as a MIDI clip, which is essentially some kind of notation that allows us to tell the instrument what to play. Here we can see that as soon as I've created a MIDI clip, our device view down the bottom has switched to our clip view, and I can switch back and forth between these two views by pressing the Shift and Tab key on my keyboard. Now, in this clip view, what I can see here is on the left, all of the different sounds within the kit that I have loaded up onto this track. And then in this main section here, I can see a bunch of musical time divisions in the form of bars and beats. And here, in order to add some kind of note to play, all I need to do is just double click in one of these slots. So say if I wanted a kick drum to play right at the start of this bar, I could just come down to where it says kick, double click, and now whenever I play this clip, a kick drum will play at the start of this bar. In order to play the clip, all I need to do is go back to the clip in the session view up here where we have this little blue rectangle that we've created and click on the play button. In order to stop playing, I can just press the space bar on my keyboard, and now we've stopped playing back our session. Let's add a few more notes. Let's add a kick drum on the second beat, the third beat, and the fourth beat of this bar. And let's add a snare on beat 2 and on beat 4. Now if I press play, we have our kick drum playing on every beat of the bar and our snare drum playing on every second and fourth beat. Let's add in a few more sounds here by adding a closed hi-hat in between every single one of these kick drums. So one right here, one right here, one right here, and one right here. And then I might add a tom right here at the end of this last beat. Currently, that's sounding pretty cool, but I think the hi-hat is a little bit too loud. So what we can do is adjust the velocity of this hi-hat to turn it down. To do this, all I need to do is just select these hi-hats by clicking and dragging and making sure those notes are selected. And then I can come down to this little velocity area down the bottom of this clip view, select any of the highlighted lines underneath where our closed hi-hat is, and just simply click and drag them down a little bit. And now that's going to turn down the hi-hat and make it play back a little bit quieter. Awesome. Now let's press our Shift and Tab key to go back to our device view. And let's say maybe I didn't actually like the sound of this kit. I could change it for another one by just simply finding another kit in our browser. Let's go to this kit 808 instead, maybe this one. And just click and drag that over the top of this kit in our device view. And now if I hit the play button, the space bar on my keyboard, we can hear our MIDI clip played back with a different kit. In order to undo that, I'm just going to press the Command or Control and Z key on my keyboard. And then we're back to that 909 kit. Let's go ahead and add another musical layer here onto this second MIDI track. And this time I'm going to add a bass sound. In order to find a bass sound, I'm going to go over to the categories section on the left, and this time go to the sounds category. And here we can see a bunch of instruments organized by the type of sound that they're designed to create. Because I want a bass sound, I'm going to go to the bass category, unfold that by clicking the arrow, and here I have a whole bunch of different bass sounds that I can play around with. Again, depending on your edition or version of Ableton Live, you'll probably have a lot less sounds than I do here, but to keep this simple, I'm just going to go ahead and choose one that you'll probably have access to. And this one is going to be the 808 Pure sound. And in order to add this, I'm going to click and drag this onto that MIDI track once again, making sure to drag it onto the second MIDI track this time. And now we have a playable bass instrument. Like last time, all we need to do to get this instrument to make some sound is to create a MIDI clip. But we can also play this instrument using our computer keyboard as kind of a musical keyboard. In order to do this, I'm going to go up to the top right here where we have this little musical keyboard icon. Click on this, and now the middle row of my computer keyboard from the A key to the L key become all of the white notes of a piano keyboard. And now in order to play this sound using my computer keyboard, I just need to make sure this track is armed by going down to the bottom of this track in our session view and making sure that this little button right here is engaged to be red. If it's not red, you just click it and make sure it turns red. And now when I play that row of keys on my keyboard, we can hear what this sound sounds like. If I want to take it down an octave, which just basically makes it playing a lower pitch, I can press the Z key on my keyboard, and that will take that middle row of keys on my keyboard and make them down one musical octave. Let's take them down one more octave. And now I've got a nice bass tone. Now what I can do, instead of creating a MIDI clip from scratch and programming in the notes and clicking them in like I did, I can actually play in some notes using my computer MIDI keyboard. Now you'll notice that when this track is armed, all of these little rectangular slots here in our session view now have a little circle in the left of them. And this means they are ready for recording. In order to record into a clip slot on this track, all I need to do is just click on this little recording button and then get ready to play. Press the spacebar. And now in order to see what I recorded, I can just double click on this clip. And now I can scroll and see all of the notes that I recorded here in this clip. Now I can hit the spacebar and play this back and hear what I recorded. And it's currently a little bit out of time. So in order to make it a little bit more in time, what I can actually do is just select all of these notes by clicking and dragging a box around them. I can right click anywhere in this clip view and come up to quantize or quantize settings. I'm going to go to quantize settings and then just set my quantization value here to 16th notes. You could change to a different quantization value if you wanted to. You could also try 8th notes or quarter notes. I'm going to leave them on 16th. And here I can hit the apply button. And now all of those notes that I just recorded have been dragged into musical time so that they sound a little bit more precise. And if I want to manually adjust the positioning of any of these notes, all I need to do is just click and drag them. So for instance, if I want to adjust the positioning of this note, I can just select it and click and drag it, move it back one. And say if I want to adjust the positioning of this last note here as well, I can click and drag that, move it back one. And if I want to add any more notes, all I need to do is just double click anywhere in here. Say I wanted to add this note, and maybe I wanted to add this note here. And now we've added those notes to be played in this instrument. If I want to delete any notes, again, all I need to do is just select whatever note that I want to delete, say these two that I added, and just press the delete key on my keyboard. Now, currently, the length of this bass clip is actually 5 bars, but I want it to be 4 bars long because typically in music, we work in bar lengths of 2 bars, 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, not so much 5 bars. So in order to adjust the length of this clip, I can actually just go up to this loop brace right up the top, which is this big bar colored in the color of the clip, go over to the very right-hand side and just click and drag this back so that it ends on the end of bar 4. So now we have a 4 bar long loop of this bass. Now, currently, this bass is a little bit loud compared to the drum kit. So in order to turn it down, I'm actually just going to go up to the session view, navigate to this 808 Pure track, and down the bottom here, I can see all of the track faders and other track controls, which allow us to control things like the output level of a track, whether it's muted, soloed, and which side it's panned to, either the left or the right side. Here, in order to turn down this bass track, I can just click on this little arrow next to this meter in the middle, and just click and drag it down. And now we've turned down the output of that bass track. If I want to mute it, I can just simply click on this track activator, which is the number. I can mute the drums. And now if I switch back to my device view with Shift and Tab, I can actually go to this 808 Pure sound and I could potentially change some of these parameters here to alter the sound slightly. Lastly, let's find an audio loop to drag into our session to layer with everything else. And we can find a bunch of audio loops pre-installed again in Ableton Live through the packs section. So I'm going to go over to our browser once again, and under places this time, I'm going to go to packs. Now, under here, under packs, you'll probably see a lot less packs than I have here. You'll probably just see maybe 1 or 2. And this one that you'll see is called the core library. So I'm going to find the core library pack, which is right here. And I'm going to unfold this. And then you'll see here a bunch of folders. I'm going to unfold the samples folder, unfold the loops folder, and then you can see here a bunch more folders underneath that. And I'm going to find a percussive loop to just click and drag into our session to layer with what we've got. I can find that under the drums loops, and you can see here there's a bunch of folders, and I'm going to open up the percussion section, and here we can see a bunch of audio files that we can just click and drag into our session. In order to preview them, I can just click on them. And when I found one that I like, all I need to do is just click and drag this one onto an audio track. So let's, for example, grab this shaker 100 BPM, or maybe this 87 BPM. And I can just click and drag this into the first clip slot on one of these 2 audio tracks here that Live has created for me. And now in order to play this clip along with everything else that I've got in my session, all I need to do is just click on the little play button on the left-hand side of it. And if I want to turn down the track, I can just pull down the volume fader. If I want to, I can even have a look at the audio file by double-clicking on this clip in our session view. And now I can see the audio file down here in the clip view. And I can also adjust parameters of this, like the pitch and the gain, and a few other things over here in the left-hand side. So I've just pitched that down a little bit. I think it sounds pretty cool. And now we can look at even further altering some of the sounds in our session using audio effects. An audio effect is basically something that allows us to take in an audio signal, process it in some way, and then output the processed version of that audio signal without actually destroying the original audio in any way, shape, or form. We can always bypass or turn off an audio effect at any point in time to hear the audio before that audio effect was applied. So in order to apply an audio effect to a track in Ableton Live, I'm just going to press Shift and Tab to go out of our clip view, and I'm going to go to the audio effects category in our browser. Here we have a bunch of different audio effects that we can add that are all grouped under different folders. And let's say, for instance, I wanted to add a delay to this shaker. I could find the delay under the delay and loop category. And here is Ableton Live's inbuilt delay, which comes with all editions of Ableton Live. And in order to add this to the shaker, I can simply click and drag this onto the shaker track. And now down in our device view, we can see the delay has been added to this shaker track. If we solo this shaker track with the little S button, we can hear this track with the delay on or with the delay off. Delay off. And delay on. I can adjust any of the parameters of this delay to my liking, but if I want to just simply flick through a few different preset settings of this delay, all I need to do is click on this little recycle, otherwise known as a hot swap button at the top right of this delay. And now you'll see up the top of our browser, it says swapping audio effect, and I can just swap this for any of these different delay presets that I can see here in my browser. For instance, I might open up vintage delay, or maybe let's go clean delay and go to dotted quarter note. Now let's take a listen to what this sounds like. And if I don't like this, I can just simply double click on another one. Maybe I might want to go to 16th note. I think that's pretty cool. So now we can stop swapping that audio effect by going up to the top of our browser, clicking on the little X icon, and then going to our shaker track, and I can unsolo this to hear it in context. I can also add audio effects to any of the other tracks that I have in my session. For instance, I might want to go to this kit track and potentially add some distortion to it. To do this, let's go back to our browser and our audio effects category and go to the drive and color section. And I'm going to go down to saturator, and I can unfold this, and maybe let's grab the hot tubes preset. And now I can just again click and drag this either onto the track itself or onto the track down in the device view after this kit. Now let's hear what it sounds like. I can solo the kit without the saturator and with it. If I don't like the sound of that, again, I can just hot swap this for something else. So I can click on this little recycle or hot swap button and select a different preset. Let's maybe go to this mid-range fattener preset or potentially this warm up lows preset. I actually like this mid-range fattener preset, so I'm going to double click on that and leave that as is, and then I can stop swapping this audio effect by clicking on that little X button. By the way, if you're enjoying and learning a lot from this video, I actually have an entire online course that takes you through the fundamentals of how to create your very own music using Ableton Live. It's got over 16 hours of content across nearly 50 videos, and it takes you through not only the basics and fundamentals of Ableton Live, but also core music production and music making concepts that you can apply to any other music making tool, whether that be hardware or software, to help you be able to translate your skills into any music making environment. I'm currently running a little bit of a discount until the end of 2023, where the course is only 247 Australian dollars, at which point at the end of 2023, it's going to go up to 297 Australian dollars. If you want to check out the course and find out some more information, there'll be a link down below in the description. But for now, let's get back to making some music. So now that we have our interesting little musical loop, what we can do is actually perform this by turning on and off or playing and stopping these loops at different points in time. So let's unsolo this kit track by going down to this solo and cue button and clicking on that. And now this time, instead of starting or stopping our playback with the space bar, we can see that all of these clips are actually still highlighted in green, or at least their play buttons are, which means that currently they're playing. It's just that Ableton Live itself isn't playing. And the spacebar controls the Ableton Live session playing, not each of these individual clips. So I can actually stop each of these clips playing on these tracks by coming down to the clip stop button here down the bottom. I can click on this, and I can do this for the second track and the third track as well. And now if I press the spacebar to start my playback, we can see that none of these clips are actually playing. If I want to play one of these clips, all I have to do is just click on the play button on the clip. And now I can bring in the shaker, and I can bring in the bass. I could stop the shaker by coming down to the stop button. I could stop the kit. And I can stop the bass. And I can stop the whole session with the spacebar. And why this is cool is we can actually record our little performance from session view here into the arrangement view. To do this, I can go up to the transport controls up the top and click on this circle or record button. Now, depending on your settings, this record button might start recording immediately, or you may have to also press the play button next to it. In the case of what I've got set up here, I have to click on this record button, and then in order to actually start playing playback, all we need to do is just play one of these clips. So let's start with the kit. And then I can bring in the bass. Then I can bring in the shaker. I can stop the kit. I can stop the shaker. And I can stop the bass. And now I can stop the playback of the session with the spacebar. And now if I press the tab key to switch over from session view to arrangement view, I can see that recording that I just recorded laid out here in the arrangement view. And here we can see all of those same tracks, this kit 909, this bass 808, and this shaker track here laid out from top to bottom, whereas before in our session view, we could see them laid out from left to right. Now it's important to note that we can only have one clip playing per track at any given time, and this clip can either be from session view or from arrangement view, not from both. So if we switch back to the arrangement view with our tab key, and if I hit the space bar to hit play, you'll see that even though we can see our playhead running across these different clips, we're not actually hearing anything. And that's because these tracks are playing from the session view and not from the arrangement view. And we can see that by the fact that these tracks are slightly more grayed out. So if I want to hear what's playing in the arrangement view for a given track, I need to go over to the right-hand side of that track and click on this little play button right here. And now we can see that that track is not grayed out anymore. And if I hit the space bar, we can hear that kit playback. If I want to return all of the tracks to the arrangement view, I can go up to the top and click on this orange back to arrangement button, and that will enable the arrangement view for all of the tracks in our session. So now I can click around this playhead here, click all the way back to the start, press the play button, and we can hear our arrangement played back. I can skip ahead a little bit, or I can skip ahead to bar 9, or right to the end. So now we can navigate around the arrangement view a little bit, and there's a bunch of different ways that we can do this, but the easiest and most simple way to zoom in and out and up and down in the arrangement view is by moving our cursor all the way up to the top where we have these bar numbers until it turns into this magnifying glass. And I can just click and drag up or down to zoom out or in. In this case, I'm clicking and dragging down to zoom in. And then I can click and drag left or right to move to the left or the right. And now what we could do is, for instance, just clean up our arrangement a little bit. So let's say, for instance, I actually wanted this bass to start a little bit earlier. We can see that we currently have this bass clip right here, which is where that bass was playing. And I can just click and drag this across, making sure that my cursor is in the top little bit of this clip, so it turns into this hand icon. And I can click and drag this back, so maybe it starts at bar 3. And I could maybe do the same with this shaker. I could click and drag and pull this back so it starts at bar 5. And then I could potentially shorten the length of this MIDI clip in this drum kit by moving my cursor all the way to the top right of this clip until it turns into a square bracket and just clicking and dragging it all the way back in. And I could do the same with this shaker to just shorten this up a little bit. And then I could maybe do the same with this bass so that it just ends at bar 11. And then I can just delete this extra little bit right here that doesn't have anything in it by just selecting that by clicking and dragging and pressing the delete key on my keyboard. Now we can also edit any of the MIDI clips in this view as well by simply selecting the clip, pressing the Shift and Tab key on the keyboard, and then we can go into our MIDI clip and we could maybe say delete this hi-hat, or we could delete this tom. But bearing in mind, this will delete that from the entirety of the rest of the loop of that sound. So in order to undo that, I can press the Command and Z keys. But let's say that I wanted to not have the hi-hat play in this arrangement for just this first 2 bars here, but I wanted it to play for the rest. I could actually select this first 2 bars of this clip, right-click, and come down to split. And now this 2-bar clip is separated from this clip right here. So I can select this first clip, remove the hi-hats and the tom from this clip. And now we can see in our arrangement view that this clip doesn't have the hi-hats, but this clip does. Let's hear that in action. Last but not least, it's also worth noting that we can actually change the speed or the tempo of the playback of our session really easily. And generally speaking, this won't affect anything except just how fast our session is played back. In order to change the speed or playback of our session, all I need to do is just go up to the top left and I can see right next to this tap button where it says 120, I can just click and drag this up or down to either decrease or increase the tempo or speed at which the session is played back, or I can double click to reset it to 120, or I can simply click once and then just type in whatever value I want, say 150, to set it to that. So now I've set my session tempo to 150 beats per minute. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like. slow it down. And of course, you can set your session tempo at the start of your music making process, near the middle of it, or just kind of wherever you feel. You might want to adjust session tempos towards the end of the process if you feel like you want to speed up or slow down your track a little bit. So now that we've created our little musical masterpiece, it's a good idea to save our session. We can save our session by going up to the top, clicking on File, and clicking Save Live Set. Here, I can just save this session somewhere like my desktop, save it as my cool tune, click Save, and that's going to save your live session as a project folder, which allows you to open it up again in the future. And now that we've saved our session, we can also export our audio of our session so that we can share the music that we've made with friends and family. To do this, I can just select the length of time that I want to export in the arrangement view by clicking and dragging on one of these tracks. Again, going to that File menu, coming down to Export Audio/Video. And here, all we need to do is just make sure that our rendered track is set to master and that our encode PCM is turned on, and so is our encode MP3. Don't worry too much about all of the other preferences here. If you know what they are, go ahead and click on them. Otherwise, don't stress too much. And now we can just click on Export, and I can select where I want to export this to. So I will want to export this to my cool tune project file, and I can go save this as my cool tune version 1. Click on Save. And now we have an audio file that we're able to share with the rest of the world, our friends, our family, wherever you want. Now, of course, there is so much more to learn about Ableton Live, but hopefully if you're new to the program and new to music making in general, that gave you just a little bit of a kickstart into the world of Ableton Live and how you can make your own music using the program. Again, if you'd like to get a much deeper and more detailed understanding of the fundamentals of creating your own music in Ableton Live, make sure to check out more information about my online course down below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Feel free to check out more Ableton Live tutorials here, and I'll see you all in the next video.